Welcome to 1850 Main Street, a place where friends get together and talk about their country and hope for a brighter future. Today, Rob Walgate and Alan C. Duncan from the Public Square are joined by David Zanotti, the CEO of the American Policy Roundtable.
Why are Americans having fewer kids? Why could it be a problem? And why has it taken the Washington Post this long to notice?
Just when I thought it was safe to buy sandwiches again. What happens, Rob Walgate? What in the world happens to Primanti Brothers? This is like the premier sandwich shop on the east of the Mississippi, all right, outside Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, in the home of the place that first put French fries on sandwiches with coleslaw and put French fries on salads.
Yeah.
This is Primanti Brothers.
It is. When Rachel and I moved to Northeast Ohio in Medina in 2004, when we went out to eat, and she asked for, she was getting a salad, and she said, go ahead and put the French fries on the salad too. And they looked at her like she was crazy. They were like, what? She was like, I want French fries on my salad. And they're like, why do you want French fries on your salad? And she's like looking at me because she feels like she's on an episode of Punk'd. She said, what? I always have French fries on steak or chicken salads. And they're like, you do? What? Like no one had heard of that.
Alan, this is a true story. And you're only like 90 minutes from where everybody has French fries on their salad, or at least at Primanti Brothers. And she was expecting the same. So now you're in Northeast Ohio and they don't do that here.
Yeah, every steak salad I'd ever had my entire life growing up on the Pennsylvania-Ohio border had French fries on it, if it had steak or chicken. So I was really confused as well.
You took me on a field trip to Primanti Brothers too, didn't you?
Yes, I did. I want everyone to go there. Throw coleslaw on there.
Yeah. See, I didn't get a salad though. I think I just got the sandwich with the fries on there. I didn't do the salad. Yeah, I missed the salad part. So I'll have to try it.
This all works good unless you're J.D. Vance, right?
Well, yes. Reports say that J.D. Vance showed up at a Primanti Brothers and he wanted to go in. And
sandwich slammed J.D. Vance.
Yeah. And the thing about it is we know with presidential candidates, vice presidential candidates, they're not traveling just by themselves. They're traveling with media, pool reporters, an entourage of folks. And someone there was like, listen, we cannot accommodate you right now. You got to go. We can't have you here, is the way the story reads, is they just weren't prepared, and rather than deal with the hassle, they just quietly declined. Now, had he been a far left politician, like maybe he would have filed a lawsuit and went to the United States Supreme Court over not being served. But he didn't do that. He was very polite and gracious and said, I understand, and said hello to everybody. And then I believe Primanti Brothers issued a statement, said he's welcome anytime. They just weren't ready for him at that moment.
Do you think some of the violence that's been breaking out over this political campaign season, violence towards Trump, let's just be honest, do you think some of that maybe scared them off a little bit? Like maybe they didn't have the infrastructure to sustain that, the security?
Possibly. I mean, they may have not had the workers. Let's face it. I mean, there's a worker shortage out there, especially at those restaurants. And you feel that an overwhelmingly large amount of people that are going to be writing about it are about to come in. It may be the easiest thing to say, hey, not today. We're just not prepared for this. We're not equipped with this. No, thanks. Now, unfortunately, he missed out on a great sandwich because the Pittsburgher, I mean, it's a great sandwich. You got to have that sandwich.
Okay, but look, the big thing is he picked up the tab the whole restaurant.
He did. Right. He picked up and left a very generous tip. All
right. Good for JD. All right. So anyhow, I don't know how I even started on it. That's like really a big news. That's a big news story, especially if you live anywhere within 100 miles of Primanti Brothers. That's a big deal. So, all right.
Anyone that's been anywhere where a president is, a vice president, a presidential candidate, a vice presidential candidate, and they show up unannounced, or they're going somewhere you're going, they turn security into a nightmare. I believe it was the
traffic.
Yeah, I believe it was the Minnesota-Michigan football game over the weekend. I think that was the game that Tim Walz showed up at, and people were not happy. They weren't. I mean, it's already a pain to get into stadiums. I mean, you got to go through, I'm like, hey, can you sign my physical too while you're at it? I mean, everything I just went through to get in the stadium. And when you add a politician that's running for the vice president, now you just created, as you mentioned, Dave, traffic jams like crazy, as well as security protocol that may have not been in place had they not been there. So there were a lot of frustrated college football fans that just wanted to watch college football. They didn't want to wait in lines.
Well, that's the warm-up for where we're going, but I couldn't miss the Primanti brothers story because that's going to disappear as quick as possible, okay? So let's just say that there was a boycott averted, it seems like. All right, and everyone just says, oh, it was just a big misunderstanding. All right, so before this thing gets out of control. And I got no stock in Primanti brothers, all right? I just kind of like their food. I just don't get enough of it.
Same.
All right, so we did a conversation. We've been hearing a lot of people responding to Whistling Past the Graveyard, talking about China, how their one-child policy created by a rocket scientist has now detonated and blown up the country. Just got an interesting business briefing from some gentlemen that do a lot of business in China, and how their consulting firms and the people that's a lot of, international, global businesses and marketplaces. You got to have a lot of help. Well, these consultants are telling a lot of these people, number one, American corporations are fleeing China. Number two, China is already pushing its mandatory retirement ages back so that now it's like post 68 because they're out of young people. This is not going well, and it's not going to get better because they played with science and they got burned. The one-child policy, not only did it deplete their population way beyond replacement level, which might be something you could turn around if you see it coming with enough time and you've got a better alternative, but they held on so long that they traumatized not just an entire generation, but 2 generations of young people, so that now in China, they don't want to have children. The penalties and the regime and the oppression, has been so significant that they don't want to bring children into a Chinese culture. Okay, whistling past the graveyard, an awful lot of people are pretending that doesn't exist. Just going right past it. Well, evidently, the Washington Post has been listening to 1850 Main Street because a few days ago, they came out with an opinion piece by the entire editorial board of the Post, why Americans are having fewer kids and why it could be a problem. Okay? No, why it could be a problem.
Could be a problem. And Alan's computer's on the desk, but we know he did want to throw it once.
That's the new one. That's his new computer, right?
Yeah, I knew I was going to need it for Christmas in America, so I did not smash it.
Oh, okay, because you didn't smash that one. I heard it was I thought it was mid-flight. I don't know if the dog saved it or what.
It was close, yeah. The fact that my kids were with me at the time, I controlled myself, yeah.
Okay, so you had burning up in you the sense of profound injustice because we've been talking about this for years, and we're not alone by any stretch of the imagination. We didn't invent this crisis, and we're not the solution. But here comes WAPO, and maybe they're about to go ahead and acknowledge the fact that America has a problem. 1.6 is not 2.1, and science doesn't turn on a dime, but not to be so, huh?
No, not to be so. And WAPO tried to analyze it as well by citing surveys that talked about people being happy or their lack of happiness. And I think that's what jumped at me is the fact that when you look at the United States and they talk about the child replacement level, and you think the United States being one of the most materialistic places, if you will, in the world, and yet people still aren't happy with the selfishness and selfish desires and the material possessions that we have. All our selfishness hasn't made us happy. So what should that tell us?
Yeah, the interesting thing is, and again, having children isn't for everybody. I mean, Jesus Christ himself didn't have biological children, unless Dan Brown is to be believed, the biblical scholar that he is. So, but not the Apostle Paul didn't have biological children. C.S. Lewis, G.K. Chesterton, some of these great thinkers. So we're not saying every single person has to have kids.
George Washington didn't have biological children.
Yes.
Father of our nation.
So there are many, many people who do not. God bless them all. But to have children should be normative. It should be a normal thing. We talk about norms, societal norms. What we kind of want to shift the norms.
Are you sure about that, Alan? Just because all of the biological predispositions of the male and female lean into that situation with such intensity, and being a good Italian with a beard you can grow in 3 days, the testosterone that you went through in your adolescence would intimate the fact that marriage seems to be a scientific idea, not just a religious one?
It's all of the above.
Sure?
It's scientific, it's philosophical, it's biological. Any realm or metric that you want to look at, yes, this is what we're pointing towards. And
it's what people do.
Yes, it's what people do, and it's how you get more people. It's very basic.
In a high-level functioning society, it's what people do.
You know what? In third world countries, in the developing world, they're actually doing it more. So yeah, this is just what the human species...
Obviously, they've been doing it a long time, or we wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
I actually think it's the opposite of that, Rob. I think.
Yeah, they're having. That's where the birth rate is thriving.
Yes.
Do you want to know who and what is going to be on your ballot this November? Check out ivoters.com and enter your address and zip code. No name, no phone number, and no email address required. Find out who all the candidates are, who's endorsing them, and who's funding them. We're not bound to any political parties, candidates, or campaigns at iVoters, and we won't tell you who to vote for. You're smart enough to figure that out for yourself. What we will do is give you all the facts and none of the fanfare. Did we mention it's free? Free minds, free speech, free agents. iVoters.com, a public service of the American Policy Roundtable.
Well, and here's there was an interesting paragraph in this Post piece. And it says, let's see, it cites an author, and she says that a growing number of women say they don't want children because of the economic costs. Okay, I understand children are expensive. But the piece goes on to say, but the data complicate this picture. After being behind for a while, millennials have largely caught up and are even eclipsing previous generations on various income and wealth metrics. And in countries where economic supports for women are very generous, Norway and Finland, the fertility rate has dropped below the United States. So they're saying this is a heart issue. This is a mindset issue, because this article is saying even if we give you support financially and you have the money, people are still making the decision not to have kids.
We live in a society that's instant gratification. We want everything right now. And it feels like the folks that they may be making more money, but a lot of them are coming out of college and they're saying, wait a minute, I want to live in the house I'm just moved out of my parents. I want to live in a home that's that size. I want to drive a car like that. And they don't realize their parents busted their tail for 20 to 30 years to be able to achieve that status.
Well, we've talked about housing. We understand that a house that your parents could have bought for $50,000 years ago is probably going for $200,000, $350,000. And I'm grossly, paraphrasing that here. But we know that buying a house isn't what it used to be in the 1960s. So that's a real issue.
Well, let's take a look at these two cultures, both whistling past the graveyard from different directions. You've got China, where the government, through repressive policy and punishment, said there's going to be one child. They played that out for almost two full generations. And not only did they break the baby in regards to their population replacement value, they broke the spirit of their people, who no longer want to get married, no longer want to have children, and no longer want to contribute to such a repressive regime. So, and it's not because they're wallowing in prosperity. They're broken-spirited because of their government. Now you come to the West and to America, where people have the greatest prosperity in the history of humanity, and the Washington Post is telling us that by and large, women are finished. They don't want to have children anymore because they'd rather have the rewards of career and lifestyle. Now, this are two completely opposite ends of the pole that take you to the same place. Evidently, the problem isn't who has too much, who has too little. The question is, why bother? Why bother having children? In one case, the people are saying because we're just going to birth them into a horrible regime that makes no sense whatsoever. The Washington Post talks about the fact that birthing them into American culture is an extremely undesirable thought as well. So I don't get it.
There's plenty of reasons to have children, the blessings that they are. And from the folks I was with last week, or even talking to my own parents, if you don't have children, you can't have grandchildren. And from what I'm hearing from many individuals, that the advantage to having children is someday you're going to get to have grandchildren, hopefully. And that blessing, I often look at,
you hear good things. You're hearing good things.
I'm hearing good things. And I'm wondering too, I'm like, one of my kids said to me, they're like, man, I can't imagine growing up with Nana as a mom. She probably never yelled. So I'm like looking around like, do you know the same lady that I know? But so that's an amazing thing, but it's a blessing that carries on for generations.
Well, what I'm picking up from both of these approaches, and I encourage everyone to read the Washington Post editorial. It is definitely worth it. It's called Why Americans Are Having Fewer Kids and Why It Could Be a Problem. The subtitle, The Question of Whether or Not to Have Children Implicates Life's Deepest, Most Vexing Questions. I'll tell you, I think it brings up an even deeper question than that neither one of these cultures and society is somehow been able yet to talk about. And that's the question of hope. It's very difficult to move forward in the context of long-term relationships, marriage, lifetime, family, lifetime. When you give birth to children, they're your children forever. You'll never not be mom or dad. They'll never not be your child. These are things that they will last as long as we're here. Whether they outlive us, we outlive them, this is an eternal, significant choice. But how do you make that choice without hope? And what I draw the conclusion very quickly is the repressive, godless regime of the Chinese communists has driven hope from the equation. People haven't figured out how to overcome their government and find hope. When I look at the American model and I listen and I read what Washington Post is talking about it seems like there's a very significant portion of young people in America who no longer have the hope that having a family will be worth it. That there's any reason to bring a child into a world that is this messed up, and that they should give up what they're trying to get in competition with having children.
Well, I do think in addition to kind of that personal peace and affluence mindset that Francis Schaeffer talked about a lot, the great writer and thinker, I think there's also the fact that an entire generation or two has been fed this global warming catastrophe philosophy. And that's not to say that we don't need to steward the environment well. We certainly do. That's a biblical mandate. But this catastrophism, or if it was the ice age in the 70s, and then it was global warming, and then, it's not actually heating up, so now it's climate change. And it's Greta talking about in 8 years, you're going to be dead. And it's that kind of stuff. She said that getting close to 8 years ago. So it's that kind of stuff, but they've bought that mindset and they live under it.
All right. Now, we're out of time, but let's do this. Rob Allen not only read the article, which is not surprising, but he read the comment section. 4,000 comments.
But a lot. Yeah.
Not all of them. 4,000 comments. He read a lot. And that's, let's take a minute. Now, the people that wrote them aren't here to defend themselves, but let's take a minute and let's talk about the mindset of this people reading the Washington Post and what they had to say, which speaks exactly to what Alan was talking about. And I want to throw one more term in this. It's a bell ringer. It's a test, Rob. Get ready. Soylent Green.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.